I've been lacking a fair bit in the Digimon Pride Month aspect, so I figure I want to add at least one more video to this month talking about the Goggle Heads of the series. Now, the main thing to note before continuing is that if there's no dub of it, I haven't seen it. I know that's a whole great debate, but I am a big dub person. So as such, we are not going to be talking about... But I digress. We'll start at the very beginning with Tai Kamiya. Now he's in a rather unique group of his own, in all honesty, as not only is he probably the only Gogglehead I can think of that has gone through more than one season, but has also gone through multiple movies. So I guess maybe it'd be easiest to try to discuss him by each iteration that he showed up in. So going all the way back to Digimon Adventure, or as I call it, Digimon Adventure 1, because the second season was known as O2. So there, maybe it's just me, but I feel like he kind of became the leader by default. So it was only after he disappeared that all the Digidestined fell apart. And when he came back, it was up to him to be able to bring everybody back together once again. Only for them to just kind of separate for a little bit. In terms of leadership, the only thing that really sticks out in my mind is the final confrontation with Piedmon. He knows that the only way to win this battle is to have it take as long as possible, so that way all the other allies that have been dispatched can bring more troops to help with the fight. Other than showing a little bit of character development through Piximon's training, I'm not really sure if there's really a whole lot that stands out about him other than just being the first. And when you're the first, that is the standard that every other one is set by afterwards. Him in Season 2. Well, O2, it's really all about the idea that he's more of a elder that is offering advice to the new group of Digidestined. And he passes the torch to Davis by giving him his special goggles. But other than that, I'm not really sure. Well, he does have the plan to be able to cover for the O2 cast as they're in the digital world trying to take down the Digimon Emperor. That's a pretty good plan, and he also helps out with the World Tour arc as well. But nothing that really sticks out, at least to me. So we skip ahead to Digimon Tri. I can't really think if there was ever really much of a group dynamic. I feel like each of the movies kind of tackled each of the characters in different lights. So Reunion was all about Matt and Tai, the idea of the heart versus the brain. And then the second movie was about Mimi and Izzy. Once again, kind of going towards the heart and the brain again, now that I'm thinking about it. I'm sure there's probably more if I were to do a deep dive into it, but really, in terms of the Tri-series, it seems like each movie is kind of dedicated to the characters rather than the characters as a group. Which I'd say that is quite a stark contrast compared to Final Evolution. So, here it's definitely the Matt and Tai dynamic, with them being the only Digidestined that are at risk of losing their Digimon partners forever. But I feel like there is definitely a little bit of leadership being shown here and even kind of delegated between the two. Tai is the one that came up with a few battle plans, especially with the one for the pre-title sequence. At least I think that'd be the best way to describe it. And it is him that is trying to convince everybody that just living your life as a child is not the way to go about it. The only other thing to mention would be this 2020 remake of Digimon Adventure. It's very complicated, as I feel like it's a show of two halves. Still waiting to see the end of it, actually. The first half is fantastic, and the second half, what is going on? I'm trying to think, is there anything that really sticks out for Tai being the leader of the Digidestined? Maybe he does come up with a few plans here and there, but nothing too groundbreaking. Especially since the beginning, I feel like the Digidestined are rarely ever together in one place. Rather, you got members that are all over the digital world trying to put out the fires throughout. So that's about all I can think of in terms of Tai Kamiya. Now we go on to Davis, which I'm not really sure what his last name is. Feel free to chime in the comments. It's kind of interesting that, well, I mean, it's shown right away why he was given the Digi-Egg of Courage, as there are many times where he'll just kind of blindly jump into battle and just have the faith of his power as well as everybody else in the Digidestined group to be able to help him out. Is there anything that really sticks out to me as him being a leader? I guess the thing I find interesting is, while Tai, well, in Digimon Tri, he definitely had the idea of fighting with his heart, but I feel like Davis was a lot more so in O2, and really just in O2. Trying to think if he was really much of a leader, if he had like any fantastic plans or anything. I feel like he might have had like a few basic ideas here and there, but I think he delegated most of the major planning to all the others in the Digidestined. So I think that's about all I can say about Davis in O2, although the thing I find curious is I guess he's not well liked among the fan base, and I'm not really sure why. I mean, I don't think he's particularly offensive or particularly outstanding as well. He's just kind of there. But then again, I guess that's kind of my criticism with O2 and the idea that, well, there are sections that are particularly fantastic and those that are particularly odious. I think that's all I can think of when it comes to Davis in O2, but if we kind of go ahead, well, they didn't really have much in Tri, in all honesty. I mean, we just see a brief glimpse of him as him as well as the O2 cast all go down at the hands of a very powerful Digimon. And then they kind of have a little bit of a bearing of the story at the very end of Future, where they are created as a moral dilemma, but not really anything that speaks to Davis as a person or a leader. I'd say it's more in the next movie, Final Evolution, that Davis does get a bit of a chance to shine. He is the one that is in charge of communications, so the older Digidestined are calling him in order for him to delegate researching Eosmon. And I think he is definitely shown to hold his own in the heat of battle, in the idea that all of a sudden all these Eosmon are coming into the real world and abducting kids away. And I feel like he's the one that not only has his head on a swivel, but basically say, okay, you attack, now you attack, now you attack. It kind of speaks to the leadership. And then as for my favorite movie in the franchise, O2 Beginning, I feel like it's very much like Tai is in Final Evolution. The idea that he is kind of the head figure that everybody is going to for advice, trying to figure out the battle tactics and all this other stuff. So I feel like that definitely speaks to more of Davis as the leader, as the Goggle Head, as I'm going to call him. It's about all I can think of. Probably move on to Season 3 next, known as Tamers, with Takato. In all honesty, because there's only 3 Digidestined, I feel like each one is kind of doing their own thing, and much like the Try movies, it is kind of a character study for each character, so there's certain arcs that discuss each one. He's definitely able to show his own in a fight, and I find it interesting that it creates a bit of a contrast between Rika and Matt. Matt doesn't want to fight because he knows that these Digimon are living creatures and he doesn't feel right about killing. While Rika just sees them as data, and destroying them is the only way to level up to get Renamon stronger. I feel like Takato kind of acts as the liaison between the two, as he knows that killing is necessary, but he does end up feeling a little guilty about it. I guess really the only thing that sticks out for him as the leader is not only him pleading with Jerry to take Beelzemon's hand, but at the end of it, he is the only one strong enough to be able to go in and destroy the D-Reaper. However, he did obviously have help from Henry and Terriermon, creating that little tornado to start sending the D-Reaper back into the digital world. Can't really think of really a whole lot in terms of the leadership role that Takato brought to the table. So I'm probably just going to jump next to Takuya. It's because I just completed the Season 4 review. A lot of the events of that season are still in my head. And I think he's probably the best Goggle Head that I can think of at this moment. It's kind of the idea that, much like Davis, he was all about the idea of, hey, if we rush him, if we all pull together, we'll be able to do it. But yet, that tactic did not work when they had to go against Duskmon. And so, in kind of realizing that he may have incidentally just sent all his friends to his death, he decides to give up on the digital adventure. That is until he is convinced that, well, they need him to be able to rescue him. And on top of that, it's all about the idea that you can't run away from your troubles. If you do, they just get even worse than they are. So when he does encounter the Dark Trailmon and goes back into the real world, I feel like that is some major development. And on top of that, he is able to really tap into the powers of being a Digimon. And as such, he is able to pass this wisdom to all the other Digidestined. So, in part of this list, I would definitely say Takuya, I think, is probably the best of the Goggle Heads in terms of being the leader of the Digidestined. Not to say that Davis or Takato are bad, it's just they're not really designated leaders. And, well, come to think of it, the same dynamic that was in Tamers really just kind of comes back again with Data Squad. Marcus, I would definitely put up there with Davis and the idea that he rushes headfirst without thinking. He kind of delegates that role to the other members of the team. Well, maybe delegate is too strong of a word. It's really more about the idea that they're just like, wait, no, you should be rushing into it. And he's just like, it's hero time. Well, Data Squad is my favorite of all the Digimon seasons thus far. There's just not really a whole lot to Marcus being the Goggle Head. Although I do love the idea that because he's an older brother, he does show a fair bit of understanding when it comes to trying to get Keenan back into the real world to realize what it's like to have a family. There's just not really a whole lot that really sticks out to him being the leader, and in fact, he doesn't even wear goggles like all the other ones that were mentioned on this list. But I feel like he very much keeps the tradition that all the other Goggleheads had, and the idea that courage is definitely their main source of energy, and the idea that they attack with fire. Then we go on to Mikey Infusion. Well, I mean, honestly, I definitely put Mikey in the same category as Takuya, in the idea that, well, maybe they're not the best leaders, but they are very effective leaders. And it's just really insane, the idea that with Fusion you had 3 Digidestined, and each of them have an entire army trying to collect all the code crowns from the evil forces of Lord Bagra. I just wish that the story was told a bit more effectively, because while that premise is amazing, each episode is really more just a monster of the week. Now you could say that about several episodes of Digimon, but after a few weeks, then the story starts to kick in, and here, it took us a very long time for that story to kick in, and the bulk of the story isn't really even told until the second half of Fusion. I guess that's about all I have in terms of the ranking, but I figure I'm just going to go for a bit of a lightning round. So who do I think would win if it came to a fight between all 6 of these Digidestined? And to make this a more level playing field, I'm just going to go for Adventure 1, Tai Kamiya, Adventure 02, Davis, and everybody else will be the same. Basically, the idea of what it would be like at the end of each arc if they were to fight each other. Let's see. Tai can go all the way up to the Mega level with Wargreymon. Davis would need the help of Ken in order to get to the Mega level. In fact, I'm trying to think. There's not really an ultimate form or Mega form of Veemon, is there? So you'd be stuck with the champion. Takato, I think Gallicmon would definitely be a force to be reckoned with. So definitely between Gallicmon and Wargreymon, that would be a pretty epic clash, I would say. Let's see, probably Ultimon for Takuya. I guess that's the closest we get to the Mega level. Well, it'd definitely be Suseteramon, but he would need to have all the other Digidestined to do that. I know Marcus would definitely be quite the force to be reckoned with, as not only does he have the power of Wargreymon, but he also has the power of the Burst Mode, which is actually above the Mega level. But then again, it also does get a little confusing in the idea that when Mikey had to take out Lord Bagra, Shoutmon basically fused with the entire army and became, I think, probably the most powerful Digimon that the series has ever seen. So I guess that would probably be my ranking, is Mikey would definitely be on top, followed by Marcus from Season 5. I would say it would be a little bit of a tie between Tai and Takato. You know what? I'm probably going to say that Takato would beat out Adventure 1 Tai, in the idea that because he is fused with Guilmon, he is able to have a better perspective of the battle rather than an outside perspective like Tai would be getting. Although would that be an advantage of itself? But I would say Gallicmon, then Tai, followed by Ultimon, Takuya, and then Davis would be at the very bottom. So that's in terms of fighting. I basically went over how effective they were as leaders. I think that would probably be about it in terms of discussing the Goggle Heads. But I figure I'll pose this question to you, the audience. Of all the Goggle Heads, and I am counting Marcus, which would be the one that you would love to have a get-together with? Be able to just spend a weekend with, just to hang out with? Who do you think would be the best? I figure I'll reply in the comments what I think my personal best is. So I hope that this was a bit of an insightful take on the Goggle Head trope that's so prevalent in the Digimon series. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Much like my survey question, feel free to leave a comment down below. And until next time, keep having fun.